Hello everyone, how is it going? I am Lucas and welcome to another episode of Amps of the Axe FX3. Today we are looking at the legendary Fender Bassmans. Now we have a couple of different ones we're going to be looking at here today, and the very first one that you just heard was the 59 Bassman. This is the world famous classic Fender Bassman that is famous for doing everything. It can do rock and roll, death metal, mellow death, funk, jazz, blues. It can do everything. This is actually the 59 Tweed Bassman. This is what this one is based off of. The 5F6A is the circuit that is in here. Coincidentally enough, this is actually Randall Smith from Mesa. This is actually his favorite circuit, and this is what he built, that classic Boogie Princeton that Carlos Santana said had a lot of boogie. This is what that circuit for that Princeton was built off of, the 59 Bassman Tweed. It's iconic. It's like ranked number 4 in the top 25 most valuable amps. Speaking of cabs, let's knock out cabs real quick. So for the cab, the original amp came with 4 Jensen speakers, and I'm using the 410 bass guy cab with a 57 on it. We're gonna check this one out when we get to the other ones, but this is what this Tweed one came with. And I'm gonna keep the same 412 on all of them so you can hear the difference between them, and I'm gonna bounce between the 212 because the 65 that's modeled off of Dweez's that we're gonna check out, that one actually came with a 212 and didn't come with a 410 like all the other Bassmans did. So this is the actual authentic layout of the amp. If you come into Ideal, it has all the different knobs that you can mess with, but I'm gonna stick to authentic for today just to kind of, dial in what the original amp would have sounded like. So the 59 Tweed, it had two 6L6 power tubes. It was rated at 50 watts. It was originally made for basses, but it got picked up by guitar players, and it can do anything. As you can see, it had 2 input channels, high and low, and Fractal always models off of the high one. And if you want to replicate what the low one would sound like, just take your input trim and put it to 0.500, and you can replicate what the low input would sound like. Some of the super famous people who use this amp was Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and Brian Setzer. They all use this amp, and I can see why, because was super awesome and clean sounding way back then. So the 5F6-A is the final 50 Tweed Bassman circuit, and this design was actually copied directly into the Marshall JTM45, but from everything I have seen, the Bassman is actually better than the JTM, but we're gonna actually check out the JTM45 later on in this series, so make sure you stay subscribed so that way you don't miss it. There's a couple of different ways you can dial in the Bassman. You can put the bass and the treble all the way down and crank the mids, or you can crank the presence in it. I kind of just put the presence to 10. I kind of just went my own way with it and just tried to dial it in the best way that I could. So as you can see, I only have the input on 1, because I find that I had it at 1.5, and I found that it would already put it into breakup range. So the harder I would strum, it would definitely take it into that breakup range. It sounded really good on 1. I'm gonna push it for you a little bit so you can see, like this is already breakup range right here. And watch, I'll push it to 5. When it comes at 5 default when you load the amp up, and it's already breaking up. And I'll push it to like right here, and then I'll push it all the way so you can hear what it sounds like. And this is all the way at 10. So as you can hear, it has a very big dynamic range. I kind of like it better at 1. I mean, it loses a lot of like the massive low end that it has, but it keeps things nice and clean whenever you have it at one. This is how I set it up. The bright switch is on because it was modeled bright input. That is about it for the 59 Tweed. I mean, it's iconic. It's been used by everybody. It's a super great amp. You kind of don't even really need a drive in front of it. I don't even really mess with it, but let's put a drive at like 10-ish. Let's go to an 808. See what that sounds like real quick. Yeah, it scoops a lot of the low end out of it. Kind of makes it sound worse. Probably would sound a little better maybe if we jacked up the input. Let's see. Yeah, it sounds better if you jack up the input whenever you put in the drive on it. So, Jesus, stop please, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next one in the sequence, and that one is going to be the 65 Bassman. So, this one is actually modeled off of Dweezil Zappa's 65 Blackface Fender Bassmans, the AB1065 circuit. A lot of people don't consider this one to be the definitive Blackface Basement because this is one of the very early CBS era Bassmans. And if you don't know, CBS bought Fender, I think like in the 60s, in the early 60s they bought them, and Fender took a nosedive when they did that because the guitars were bad. A lot of people don't like what they did with the amps. They said they wasted a bunch of the circuits. But this is one of the very early ones, but it's still a really good amp from everything that I've read and from what I've seen. So, like I was saying before, these actually came with a 212 cab, so we're definitely going to check that out whenever we get it playing. So, this one is the AB165. It's a little bit dirtier and nastier than the 59 Bassman. The 59 Bassman, to me, it has a lot of rich mid-range. These are kind of scooped a little bit. You see what I'm talking about? This one gets you into that Fender Marshall range. This one gets you into that Marshall range. You're already here, Fender. It gets you into that Marshall type of distortion territory. The Blackface Basement, it had two channels. It had a bass instrument and it had a normal instrument. Fractal actually modeled both of them. So the first one we're going to hear is actually the bass input, and it gives guitar a little bit more mellower tone whenever you plug it into the bass input. The presence knob on here, if we go to ideal, it's actually maxed out because it had a fixed parameter inside the real amp, and there's actually no mid control on the original amp. That's why it's in 5 whenever you go to authentic there. Just like with the other Bassman, they had 2 inputs, and Fractal modeled the one with the highest input. Just drop this down to 0.500 and you can simulate what the lower input one was like. Okay, enough yapping. Let's get to some playing. As you can hear, this one is a lot more, it's a little brighter. It's definitely a different characteristic than the 59. Watch, I'll play them back to back for you. Watch, put that at 1, sorry about that. Fine, this one, the mids are, you can actually use more mids. They're kind of almost scooped out because on here, the mids come up so fast, because watch, I'll go to 2 and they're already more plentiful. See how on this one the mids are not missing, but they're not as prominent as in the 59. I find when you turn the input up on the 59, the mids kind of like rush to the front, and they're very, very in your face. I just put a little bit more bass in this one, and I jacked up the treble. I didn't put any speaker drive. I didn't put any EQ. I didn't put any EQ or anything on the 59 one either. And this one is actually, like I said before, this one is actually on the bass side of things. Fine, this one doesn't have that extreme breakup that the 59 has. The 59 is, I find that like when you turn a knob, it's like instantly trying to break up. I find this one like takes its time getting there. By the way, everything I'm playing today is going to be on my G&L Strat with DiMarzio noiseless pickups. That about wraps it up, I think, for the actual bass input. That wraps up things. So let's move on to the normal input. The normal input, as you can see, I actually didn't touch the treble. On here, I just bumped up the bass. This one, the normal input is a lot brighter, almost harsher, I should say. As you can hear, this one's a lot more chimey to me. It sounds like, you know, it lets the Strat's chiminess really come through. Then again, it is on the normal input, so the bass one, you know, it makes sense why it's not as chimey as this one. I did not touch the treble. This one's already nice and bright as it is. I just bumped up the bass. It didn't have any mids. Like I said before, there's no mid control. The presence already is stopped there. I didn't put any speaker drive on it. I didn't put any EQ input or output EQ. I didn't mess with any of that. So, oh yes, let's see what this sounds like with a drive. What do I have it on right now? I have it on like 1.5. Let's see what it sounds like when we kick a drive on. Let's put the input up a little bit. Let's see if it drives it a little more. Man, that one sounds pretty good. Whenever you kick on the drive, a little bit more mids get in there, so you may have to kind of scoop a little bit out. But I mean, for a clean amp, this sounds fantastic. If you throw some reverb and some delay on here, you can get some fantastic clean sounds with it. So now that we have heard the 65 with the 412 cab, let's check out how it originally came back in the day. We're going to be checking it out with how it sounds with a pair of 212 speakers. I'm going to be using the Brown Super 57A. That's kind of the closest thing IR wise that we have in the Axe Effects that kind of gets in that same range. Let me refresh your memory. This is going to be on the bass input. This is what it's going to sound like with the 412s, 410s, excuse me. Now let's go over to the 212s. Let me strum and change over while it's still going. It's a little different, it's a little bit different sound. It still sounds really good to me. Let's actually go on to the normal input. We're going to do the same exact thing. We were bouncing between the two with the 410s. I definitely noticed on the normal input, the bass response from the 212s is like massive. The bass jumps way up. I think it kind of sounds, I don't know. I really don't know which one I prefer. I like the bass response with the 212s for sure. And that was just to kind of give you an idea of what it would have sounded like with the original amp, with the original cab, just, you know, to spice it up. But in the Axe-Fx, we have so many IRs, we lose track of them. So if you find a good IR that you like, just stick with it and you'll be able to get a good sound. The very last Bassman we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Tweed's 65 Blackface Basement, but we're actually going to be looking at the bass channel, and the bass channel is actually very, very special. Now this one is kind of hidden, and when I say hidden, see, it's in the D's. It's technically the same Bassman as this one that we were looking at, the 65 bass guy. This is just the bass input, and the bass input is special because it's modified by Blankenship, and it has no tone stack. First of all, it has an input driver here. Treble knob is modified to affect the negative feedback. So if you put it down, it gets a lot looser. This is what it sounds like just on stock settings, and we're using the same 410 Bassman IR. It is way more driven and has way more balls per se than what the normal input did. Definitely gets you into that Marshall territory. It's very pissed off, but actually it sounds pretty badass. Let's actually change the IR. I'm going to go over to, this is from Leon Todd. This is actually a Warehouse Guitar speaker IR that he made. Warehouse Guitar has a greenback and they have a V30 version. They actually sound really good. I have a cab with the Veteran 30 and that's their V30 model, and it sounds really good. This is his mix that he made. It goes really well with Marshall-y sounding amps and with Marshalls. It sounds very good to me. Let's actually tweak this thing a little bit. Let's see how crazy the input drive can get. Gets nice and crunchy when you bring it up right there. I think it sounds perfect at 150 to tell you the truth. Let's mess with the treble knob, aka the negative feedback. It sounds pretty good, like around 6. I think it's where it sounds pretty good for me. Now if you click on the ideal, as you see, everything here is on 5 because it doesn't have a tone stack, and presence is jacked up just like it was on the normal input. Master's cranked. I did not touch anything in here. I didn't even put it with a drive because it really doesn't need any. I didn't touch anything. I literally just loaded up and started playing it. It sounds really, really mean and really, really badass to me. annoying that this one is in the D's and it isn't right next to all the bass guys whenever you're loading up the amps, because look, see this, where are they? They're right here, and this one's way over here. It's not that big of a deal. I think that's just how it fell whenever they modeled it. So that is gonna wrap things up for the Bassmans, guys. Now tell me, do you have any patches that you use the Bassman for? I have a patch that I use it for on bass. I kind of didn't really want to show it because I kind of want to focus more on the guitar side of things, but this thing is absolutely fantastic for bass. You can use the bass input and you can put like a drive on it and tweak it, and it sounds fantastic. So guys, let me know, how do you use the Bassmans? Do you love them? Let me know in the comments down below. For me, I'm gonna have to be out. Peace.